These cards have value even if you don't see it yet. Sometimes when a card is first printed, every player out there says it's worthless. It has no value whatsoever. But a lot of times you can't see the value of certain cards until way off into the future. Welcome back, everyone. MTG Moxman here. Thanks again for hanging out with me on another card watch video today. Because that value cannot always be seen. Some players, though, get lucky sometimes, and I do mean it's luck because you're making a decision based on what you think the card could do years down the line. And looking that far in advance and risking capital to hold on to those cards is a very risky thing. Now, the cards on today's video, and there are only 5 of them, but these cards are all cards I hold right now. I'm going to be honest with you, none of my positions in these are very large except for one. I will go over the numbers I have, how many copies I keep and why I keep that many copies, and what I hope to do with them in the future, because that does have relevance with what you decide to do. For players who just want to buy a copy of a card, play in a deck and be done, totally understood. But for those players who are hoping to flip into some value or take those cards, wait for them to rise in price, they hope, and then flip into a more expensive card like a dual land, like a Wheel of Fortune style card from the reserve list, that can and does happen. Players do it all the time. They see a card, they see something in a card, and they wait for that value to go up. And if it doesn't go up, well, then they spend some money. But if it does, they can hit big. And I've seen people flip cards into Black Lotuses before. It doesn't happen often anymore. But these things do and can happen. So as we go through and I share my wisdom with you, you will decide. You will tell me good picks or bad picks. That's what it's going to come down to, because you're the one making the decision on your end. But these are cards I'm holding, so now you'll actually know some of the choices I've made, and I'll explain to you why I made those choices. Here we have Mox Amber from Dominaria 2018. For anyone who has been on my channel for more than a hot minute, you know why this card is here. I have the world's largest position of this card that I know of. When I was buying this card for $5 a card or less in some cases, people teased me, they made fun of me, they laughed and said the card will never be worth anything. Now, if you look at the height there, and that's around the $80, $85 mark, there is something I saw that nobody else saw. Here's a larger image. When this card was first coming out, when it first got released, and we had all kinds of medium-sized legendary creatures that came with it, and there was a few guys like Reese the Redeemed and other cards of that ilk. This card was a legendary artifact for 0. It said tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool among the legendary creatures and planeswalkers you control. I saw that this card, they were going to print lower casting cost planeswalkers, lower casting cost legendary creatures to make this card viable. Because to my knowledge, Wizards of the Coast has never let a Mox fail in the long run. And I'm still looking at Mox Tantalite, but I only bought 16 copies of that because I'm not as sure for that card. But Mox Amber, I was 100% in on. I was buying these copies for less than $5 a piece in some cases and buying them by 20s, 30s, and 50s every single payday. At first, it was a joke, a meme when I first started this channel. That I said, hey, look, I got another 25 Mox Ambers. Oh, look, I got another 20 foil Mox Ambers. And I started building my position, building my collection, knowing it could go to 0. It didn't matter to me because it was kind of a joke at the time. But I was still serious about the fact I saw value in the card. And I made a lot of money on this card. I sold it before Brothers War came out. I liquidated a very large position, not nearly enough. As you guys know, on this channel, I have the world's largest position. So this kind of feature of a card, you have to look beyond what people see. What's in your face and see what can be coming down the line in the future. Now the next card. Again, this is not reserve list, but this is Urborg from Legends. Now this card's only been as high as 60 bucks, okay? Right now it's sitting below that value. It's around 22, it's around a little bit less than half, but you can find moderately played, heavily played copies for 10 to 15 bucks. Now look at the card. Okay, number one, love the artwork. But when you look at this, it says tap to add 1 black to your mana pool. But there's a secondary power for this land that makes it very versatile. Remove first strike ability or a swamp walk ability from target creature until end of turn. That little side brings this to the next level of a card with no drawbacks. Nothing stops this card from being used in black commander decks as an aside, as just a land to put in there that maybe could have a kickback effect that you can lay into later on in the odd game with no drawback because it doesn't come into play tapped. That is a very cool land. Now, in the case of Mox Amber, where I have a very large position, this one I only own 8 copies for myself. I didn't risk a massive amount of money because liquidity is an issue whenever you're trying to sell cards. And I learned that over the years. Having a very large position is very hard for you to liquidate if you don't own a store. So having smaller positions of 8 to 12 copies of a card you get at a very decent price can make a lot of sense, because if that card spikes up to the $50, $60, $70 level, trading in 8 of those copies or 12 of those copies if you bought 16, or if you bought 8, trading in 4 could still mean a couple $100, which moves toward a dual land, moves toward those medium-sized cards you maybe never could have afforded, but you paid pennies on the dollar compared to this card. Because this one used to be as low as $8. Very crazy stuff before 2020, right? An amazing card. Now the next one, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. And the reason I'm showing you this is it's continuing to go up in value. I only own 6 copies of this card. This, of course, is an amazing card to have in anybody's collection, because it says it's a legendary land. Each land is a swamp in addition to other types. I love this mana cycle, and they've never finished it. But because they haven't finished it, and I still think there's potential for them to do it, whenever I get a chance, if I see it on sale somewhere cheap, I will grab one of the versions. I prefer to go after the planar chaos versions because that's the OG version. That's why I'm showing you it, even though there's an M15 here. But when you see these prices, guys, when you see these things etching up, that doesn't mean this is a time to buy this card right now. But these are cards I've bought earlier when they were going for like 20 bucks because Modern Horizons 2 came out and really sunk a lot of these prices down. There are times to buy, there are times to hold. But these cards will always have some kind of value and versatility to them. Wizards recognizes that and will use that in play. Now let's check out our next card. Okay, guys, let's go to this one. And I'm going to show you Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. This is another card in the same cycle as Urborg. And the reason I'm sharing this one, I was buying this card at 25 bucks and I thought that was a deal. This one's down to like $7, $8 if you go on TCG Player. And of course, if you're buying anything on TCG Player, please remember before you do to click the link inside my videos. Guys, every description of every video, I put a TCG affiliate link. You click the link, it takes you to TCG Player. Anything you buy, this channel gets a 3.5% kickback. I really appreciate those who take the time to do it. So thanks again. Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. Guys, this land is the green version. It makes everything a forest. Now imagine if they do the blue, the red, the white. I've talked to people about this because many people think it will never get finished. But whenever Wizards needs to pull a lever to make something happen, to make something go boom, be excited, this kind of thing will get excitement. And the closer we get to finishing this land cycle, the higher the prices go. And that means Wizards can capitalize on it, recognizing they can really limit the print run for this thing later on. They'll know the value in Commander. They will know the value going forward in other series of sets. And they will make sure this is hard to get and probably found only in very premium products if it ever does get complete. But for those who took advantage and bought it for $7, $8, kudos to you. I paid $25. I currently hold 26 copies of this card. I plan on holding them on for a very long period of time to see if they ever finish the cycle. Long period of time being 8 to 12 years. Okay? I don't care. It didn't cost me that much. And I'm okay holding on to it. If it goes to 0, oh well. We all take chances in life. We all have some fun. Now, let's check out our last card today. Tiamat, and I bought the borderless version, okay? I do have regular versions as well, but I'm focusing on the borderless version of this card because I just think it's a cooler version of the artwork. And of course, this is from Adventures in Forgotten Realms, and I love this card. It's less than 20 bucks. You can find for like $8, $9 if you look around. And it's already been reprinted, I think, in what, the Secret Layers. There's an amperstamp version that came out with the set with like the Dungeon Dragon symbol. Very cool card. Because this let me know. I knew this was coming, and I knew they were going to give us more dragons in future sets to make Dragon tribal. And they've done it. Not just with the Dragon being reprinted, but you can see they're moving into more tribal-themed decks, even though they say they're not. When you look at the decks they're giving us, recently in the Commander versions with Slivers and with the Eldrazi, they realize a lot of players like the excitement of having these style of decks, and that tells you that they're going to do it again. So for anyone who's on that reserve list buying like Griffin Canyon, Winding Canyons, that kind of stuff, those lands, probably will have use down the road. You like wizards? Maybe you should buy a couple of wizards, guys. There's things you can look at inside mind's eye when you find it cheap and you say, Tiamat. Well, this thing lets you go and get 5 dragons that are not named Tiamat that have different names. Well, look at all the legendary dragons they gave us. This will be the same for anything. This is why I still collect Thrall Champion, because there are ways these cards could become useful, and when they're this cheap, it's kind of like a fun little aside you can do, saying, I'm going to buy one, I'll throw it in my cart, it's a few extra bucks, so I'm not going to buy a McHappy Meal for myself, I'll skip it, get a card that might have value later on, in case I ever want to move into an expensive card, or in case I actually want to play with the card, because that happens too. This card immediately found its way into my son's commander deck as he was building. He said, I gotta have it! And that can happen a lot too. And if cards don't get reprinted on a regular basis, the values do rise. This is why I'm sharing these cards with you. I own tons of cards I have small little pieces of where I say, if something happens, great. If nothing happens, I'm okay with that. I am safe in what I have done because I limit liability. When you buy hundreds of copies of something, liquidity is a real issue. So you gotta be okay knowing you have hundreds of copies of something. But if you plan on moving a card later or hoping it goes up so you can trade up that value, you don't want to have too much exposure. You want to have a few copies. And that's only if you got them at a good price. You don't want to buy them at the high, which is why something like Urborg, I wouldn't be buying at this price. But you have in my Cradle of Growth, I would buy at this price. Tiamat being like $8-9 for a regular version, as low as like $7, I think. Those are cards I might dive a few extra copies into, thinking Wizards may not print them as often from the D&D side of things, okay? Maybe they will, but I'd be willing to risk a few bucks at least to get a play set of 4 to see what would happen. I like the excitement of looking at things like that and seeing, did I get lucky, did I not? Because Mox Amber gave me a lot of playroom with a lot of the choices I've done in the past. I've had smaller successes before that, but never as big again as I've had with Mox Amber. So all these other cards are like tiptoes in the water saying, I wonder what will happen if they give any of these cards a little breathing room, if they add a little more structure to those cards. It's a fascinating thing to have a hobby aside like this and seeing where these cards go year after year. Not day after day, not month after month. You put them in your binder, you forget about them. But you look for cards that have strange wordings. Look for those cards that could have potential down the road and what it would take to connect those cards together. Because sometimes Wizards gives away what they're planning, just like they did with Mox Amber. Anyway, guys, a little insight into the way Moxman thinks about doing this type of thing. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, slam that stuff down in the comment section. Thanks again for watching the video today. Allow me to entertain you, and I hope if you enjoyed it, you'll consider subscribing to the channel, helping me get closer to the 20,000 subscriber party that we're going to have when we get there. And of course, a thumbs up for this video. And if you're buying some cards and you feel comfortable telling me, you can either email me or slam them down in the comment section so I can read and see where your mini victories have been. I love a good story, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow for another card watch where we're going to discuss some reserve list cards. And of course, guys, a big shout out and thank you to the fantastic patrons on the channel who show that support each and every month for this content creation on the channel. Without them, this wouldn't happen. They are the supporters, guys. Thanks again. Looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Well, you made it to the end. And you're probably hoping there's some kind of special thing here at the end about Mox Ambers. How many does the Mox Man still own? Yes, I liquidated a lot of them. But I guarantee I still have the world's largest position because nobody got them as cheap as me. Nobody was buying them like I was buying. There was one other person. Andrew, if you're watching this, you're that one other person. But you got rid of yours, and I kept mine. And I built it, and it grew. And now, even after liquidating, I still got the most. I get to brag about that forever. So if you think I'm liquidating more, because I know the price is actually starting to recover, nah, I'm not going to sell anymore. I'm going to sit on those things forever now. They're part of the channel. Guys, have a great day. Thanks for hanging out. Put Mox Amber in that comment section because, yeah, that's probably my greatest success for those style of cards. For anything new that's not reserve list. If you want the reserve list one, you got to wait till tomorrow. The reserve list one's tomorrow.